Welcome to the Screen Podcast. Thanks for joining us for insight and analysis of the global film industry. Brought to you by the teams from Screen International and ScreenDaily.com. I'm your host, Wendy Mitchell, a contributing editor at Screen, and we've got maybe a gory episode ahead. Let's see. Quite dramatic, and I wore black just to theme myself. But we're talking about horror today, and the summer of horror, the summer of genre. And of course, there's no one better to talk about this than Screen's reviews editor, Nikki Baughan. Welcome back, Nikki.
Hi, Wendy.
So I think we're going to start in a very obvious place, which is at the start of the summer. All we could hear about all the time was Curry Barker and Kane Parsons, that these two YouTubers, these young filmmakers, were saving horror, that this was also the future of indie filmmaking as a whole, maybe. The two films did extraordinarily well at the box office. Obsession worldwide has now hit about 488 million at the time of this recording. Backrooms is on about 395 million, and that's US dollars. To put that in context, It made 720 million worldwide. The Conjuring Last Rites made 500. Get Out made about 300. So these are both topping Get Out. Nikki, just first of all, I know we've kind of heard about these films, but what did you make of them both, just from your critical perspective, just as individual films? Were you a fan?
I was a fan, like everybody else, I think. I mean, there's no denying, is there, that they are fantastic horror films. I know some people like Backrooms more, some people like Obsession more. I am Obsession. That was my favorite of the two. I think Curry Barker's a really fantastic filmmaker and storyteller. But I was familiar with him from his YouTube shorts. More so than than Kane Parsons, who's the director of Backrooms, more so than his shorts. But no, there's no denying they're both superb, strong horror films and deserve the box office attention they've got.
Yeah, I would just chime in to agree that I really enjoyed watching both of them. I'm so glad I saw both at the cinema with sort of packed out audience. Kind of strange for me. I think because I'd heard so much hype, I was expecting perhaps both of them to feel like they were reinventing the wheel, and they're not. I mean, I think Obsession for me was the stronger overall film, but it also felt like somebody from UCLA Film School could have made it. I mean, I just felt didn't really shock me in any ways. Backrooms, I thought, oh my gosh, I just thought, what an exciting voice. Ultimately, the film did not 100% hold together for me, but I actually was sort of more intrigued as just sort of an auteur statement and piece of work with Backrooms. But it's also just exciting to see two independent films do well, young filmmakers. I kind of love that. And do you sort of take it with a grain of salt that people, I mean, these are just two guys. Yes, they both did things on YouTube. Is this a trend? Is this the future of horror? Is this just two guys and we can't read much more into it? Or, you know, I found it quite crazy when people were saying, oh, this is how all independent film is going to flourish now. And it's like, I don't think that is true. But yeah, what are you feeling about what this says about that YouTube into filmmaking pipeline?
I always find it interesting when there's a new thing that happens, and it is a coincidence that these two films have happened at the same time. I don't believe that was intentional. It's just the way it's happened. So, of course, two films equal a movement, right? So it's people are saying this is the new thing. This is the savior of horror. And that really bugs me because I don't actually think horror needs to be saved. I think horror needs to be discovered and supported. But I think there is fantastic horror out there at every level. And what's happened here is that Hollywood, quote unquote, has seen these YouTube filmmakers, seen the millions and millions of views these guys have amassed on YouTube. And they are millions of views for their short films. And really, that kind of takes some of the risk out, right? They're like, well, these people have got a fan base that hopefully will follow them to the cinema. And that's exactly what's happened. And YouTube is fueled by word of mouth. Horror is fueled by word of mouth. So those two things make it quite a straightforward pipeline for savvy producers who are looking at YouTube, who are looking to find new voices. I don't think they're the saviors of horror. I don't think they are the vanguard of the next generation of independent filmmakers. I think they're two fantastically talented individuals, but there are many of them out there. And I think it's about using YouTube and other platforms, other areas to find these voices and nurture them and help them build careers.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think, it's notable that both of these filmmakers were discovered on YouTube, but they didn't just make a YouTube feature. They partnered with more traditional producers and finance and got themselves into the system, so to speak. Nikki, I haven't seen a sort of female filmmaking voice break out of YouTube yet. I don't watch a lot of YouTube, if I'm honest. Is that coming? Does it still skew a bit male, do we think?
I think YouTube absolutely is a pipeline for male filmmakers at the moment. And I think, it's a huge topic because you have to look at what YouTube is and how the algorithms work and who's visiting YouTube. When we talk about all the filmmakers that have come out of YouTube, we're talking about people like David Sandberg, who did Lights Out, turned that into a feature. Michael and Danny Philippou, who did Rack-A-Rack on YouTube, and then they've made Talk to Me, huge horror hit. Then they made Bring Her Back. We're talking about Kyle Edward Ball, who was doing Bite-Sized Nightmares on YouTube and made Skinamarink, which wasn't huge at the box office, but massive in the horror community. And of course, Mark Fishback, who actually crowdfunded his Iron Lung project and moved that from YouTube and didn't have a studio involved. And that became very successful. Women, there are less women. Far, far, far fewer women. I mean, there's a filmmaking duo called Chris Collins and Selena Myers. They made a horror film called House on Eden, which was released last year through RLJE Films and Shudder. That hasn't set the box office alight. I mean, I think you'd struggle to find someone who's seen it because there's no sort of backing to it. There's no sort of excitement. YouTube as a platform is bigger, I think, than anybody really appreciates. It is gigantic. I mean, I've just got the figures in front of me. There was a study by Global Media Insight released this summer. And you have to kind of take a deep breath with these numbers. There's 1 billion hours of video watched every day across the world. That's 122 million global users every day. And 500 hours of video uploaded every minute to YouTube. So how do we find the content to engage with there?
Yeah, because I'm sure there are like dozens of great women posting content, but it's not clicking with the algorithm. Maybe it's not getting the word of mouth, right?
That's the word, Wendy, algorithm. So YouTube, as we know, is driven by an algorithm. It shows you what you want to see. It's relying on what you type in and then what you start looking at. So it's relying on people finding things rather than putting things in front of people. So there are more male users of YouTube than female users. There are 53% to 47% male to female. Interestingly, India is the number one country of YouTube users. The USA is second. UK doesn't even place in the top 10, unsurprisingly. But I think YouTube just mirrors the inequalities and the issues that we're seeing everywhere else in society and the industry. Female content creators, if they're making lifestyle content, homemaking, fashion, shopping, that's kind of where they're taken seriously. We go, okay, women know about that stuff. There's not a lot of support on there for females, filmmakers who are particularly in the genre space. If you go on there, when you start on YouTube, as my son is 12, he goes on YouTube, he watches gaming videos. He's watching largely male content creators because they are creating the content that he wants to watch. It's usually transport or gaming. So his algorithm is being set from a very young age and it keeps feeding the same things back at him. You're talking about people like Mr. Beast, and he's not remotely related to film, but he is part of this YouTube culture structure. He has 390 million subscribers. He is number one. Of the 50 most subscribed to YouTube channels, 7 are women, and 4 of those women are girls, children.
Okay.
In fact, there's only one female content creator in the top 10, and she's a 10-year-old girl. So that's where the algorithms are skewing. And, you've got unconscious bias coming into this of the users of YouTube. They're looking for the things that they know. It's not a platform that helps you find stuff outside of your, what you want to be looking for.
Yeah, your usual sort of bubble. It feeds you more of that.
Exactly. It does. And, you talk about going down YouTube rabbit holes. They want you to. They want you to keep clicking on the next one and the next one, but they're all kind of sort of in the same vibe. What YouTube does do really well is it supports your fandom of creators. So once you found those creators, it will show you the next thing. You subscribe, you get the next video. You have a community that you can talk to. But again, that's largely male content creators. And there's also the really important point that everybody who creates content online opens themselves up to comments. And we know for a fact that women are far more likely to receive abuse and negative comments than male creators. And if you turn off those comments on your video, the algorithm drops them down because it's about viewer engagement.
Yeah.
So those women who are putting their head above the parapet, as we all do as women in the media, opening yourselves up to comment from anywhere, you can't switch those comments off. And I'm sure a lot of women have just said, do you know what? It's not worth it. There are women doing great work on YouTube. You've just got, it's short films. You've just got to go and look. There's a fantastic woman. She's not a filmmaker, but she talks a lot. She does these amazing in-depth essays on horror. Her name is Rachel Barker. She's from New Zealand. She's called Girl on Film. And she is fantastic. But I haven't heard a lot of people speaking about her. Somebody has to tell you, because it's not going to be put in front of you unless you broaden your horizons or search horizons. And people don't tend to do that. They're on YouTube for 40 minutes scrolling.
For sort of comfort of what we already know or might already like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing our bit for the algorithm today, Nikki, because this will certainly be on YouTube. So anybody watching this on YouTube right now, thanks for watching two women, and don't have a go at my roots and my hair. They're going to be fixed soon. Yeah, I guess moving on past that sort of YouTube conversation, what else has really stood out to you about horror this summer?
If we're talking about, the big theatrical horror releases, I think it's been a disappointing summer. We've had Evil Dead Burn, which was not very good. I did this again. Caveat, this is my opinion. It did make 161 million at the box office, so some people liked it. But the latest in a franchise, nowhere near as good as the previous one. Then we had Scary Movie 6, which people went to see it, but that's a franchise that really is just limping along. And we've also this weekend had Eli Roth's Ice Cream Man, which is probably on my list for worst film of the year so far.
Wow. Okay.
It's not good horror. It's not good filmmaking.
I would put one of my worst of the year being Her Private Hell from Nicholas Winding Refn that we saw in Cannes. And again, that's a genre film that did not work for me.
Genre horror is a very individual thing. What works for one person will not work for another, and that's it's really clear in horror. I will say though, what is exciting for me this summer is the independents. It's Leviticus, which is the Australian LGBTQ plus horror film about two boys in a small town, which is absolutely fantastic. I would recommend anybody seek that out, genre fan or not. Mark Jenkins' Rose of Nevada, a kind of really creepy ghost story.
I love Rose of Nevada, yeah.
Yeah, his most accessible film to date, I think, and really great film. And then, of course, Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. Jane Schoenbrun's fantastic slasher, meta mash up with Gillian Anderson as the ultimate final girl. Just gloriousness, camp gloriousness. So that, these smaller films, these independent films are good. They're subversive. They're clever. They're playing on a sort of a space that the Hollywood films don't seem to have caught up to yet. They're just sort of flogging these franchises or carrying on with these franchises that they know work, and they're not really working.
Teenage Sex and Death, I was just looking at the US numbers because I think it opened only on 5 screens and had one of the strongest per screen average launches of the year. Ever since I saw that film at Cannes, I just want it to be the cult hit of the summer. And I hope people don't have sort of cinema fatigue if they did Backrooms and Obsession and they need to go see this movie. Such a delight. Any sort of trends that you're seeing, or just that success of the indies starting to break through a bit more and some of the studio films not working as well in horror?
I think the studios are still safe betting. I think they're Scary Movie's been going on for over 20 years, and they're not changing it up. It's and that film in particular was trading on a kind of, yes, we're offensive, isn't it funny? And I think that kind of atmosphere was old 10 years ago. But the new filmmakers, they're young. They're and if they're not young, they're kind of plugged in and they understand that audiences are intelligent and looking for something different, something that they can really dig into. And I keep coming back to this authentic voice. All the horror films that are connecting with me have an authentic voice. They're coming from a place, an experience. Even if they're dealing in otherworldly things, they're coming from a genuine experience. And I think audiences are responding to that.
One studio film I do have high hopes for coming up is the new Resident Evil, directed by Zach Kreger, who we know from Weapons. We had Charles Gant on this podcast talking about how well that had gone down at Cine Europe, because it maybe feels not just a franchise retread. Like, people loved Weapons. Maybe Zach's bringing something new into that. Is that one I'm assuming you're looking forward to that one?
I am, because it's Zach Kreger, and he did obviously Weapons, and he did Barbarians before that. And he's really interesting. If you hear him or see or read him talking about his experience, he will be honest and say most of the people he pitched Barbarians to passed on it, because it is a very out there, independent horror film, very cutting edge, very scary, and a really kind of vivid vision. And he's honest about it. He says, when I was pitching that around town, nobody wanted it. And then I made that. And then everybody was falling over themselves for what came to be Weapons. And I think, it's about taking a chance, isn't it, on filmmakers. So now Zach Kreger's, we know he makes good stuff. So that's a good thing for the Resident Evil franchise, because, okay, we know he's going to do interesting things. We hope he's going to do interesting things. I'm sure he will. I am looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to, later in the year, we've got Clayface, and I surprised myself saying that because I'm not a huge superhero / comic book.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't really do those films, but this one I am hearing much more about.
It's James Watkins directing, who made Speak No Evil, which is a fantastic, tense, psychological thriller. Mike Flanagan's involved with the story and exec producing. So I am looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to a film called Other Mommy, or Mummy, as we would say over here, but Other Mommy, by UK filmmaker Rob Savage, who of course made Online Horror, Host.
Rob is so smart. I hadn't been tracking that, so I will definitely be checking that out. Yeah, he kind of thinks outside the box, doesn't he?
Yes, he's an independent filmmaker that's really kind of forged his own path and is being rewarded with, exciting projects. And it's also produced by James Wan's Atomic Monster, so it's got some genre clout behind it, which is really good. And then, of course, at the end of the year, Werewolf by Robert Eggers.
Oh, I saw the trailer for Werewolf when I went to see the Odyssey, and I adored Nosferatu, and this, looks similar veins, and I can't wait.
He's a really exciting horror voice, and he's on record as saying this is the darkest thing he's ever written, and I'm like, right, well, sign me up. Yeah, absolutely, perfect December. So those are the ones I'm looking forward to. We've got End of Oak Street coming soon, which is kind of genre. I'm kind of looking forward to that as well. So some more to come this year.
Great. There's some good ones to look forward to. You mentioned the Rob Savage new film coming, and that's exciting. But what I quite often hear all the time, I mean, we do love a moan in the British film industry, don't we? Why isn't there any British Get Out? Why is there no British Babadook? Or, why aren't... And is that a fair criticism? Are we not doing them? Are they not cutting through the noise? Are there some good ones that I've missed?
I think what do we mean when we ask that question? Are we talking about quality? Are we talking about box office breakthrough? Are we talking about global audiences?
I think
because
all.
Yeah.
Let's tick all those.
Let's try and tick all those boxes. I think there are great UK horror films out there breaking through. I think of all the horror and genre films made, only a select few break out each year. Obviously, marketing and timing has an awful lot to do with that. I mean, there was the Irish horror film Hokum earlier this year, which is fantastic, by Damien McCarthy, who also made Oddity last year, and that's made $24 million, and which for an Irish genre film, I would say that's pretty good. I mean, it has got Adam Scott in it, so that's a help.
But he's not necessarily a guy I think of when I think, I mean, of course there's Severance, but he's not like a horror mainstay. So I still think that's a really great result for that film.
Well, I think I'm right in saying that Babadook made $10.6 million. Hokum's made $24 million. So when we say, where is the UK Babadook? What do we mean? And I think there are so many incredible UK filmmakers out there, and have always been, fighting the good fight for genre. And I think people only see genre. If you're not a genre fan, I think you only see genre when it's right in your face at a cinema. But if you are a fan, there's so much out there. There's been really exciting content this year. Hokum, 28 Years Later, obviously, is the obvious one. And then we've got Victorian Psycho by Zachary Wigan with Micah Monroe, which is coming out later. And I think will do well. Horror filmmakers, particularly grassroots horror filmmakers, know how to fight. They know how to make a small budget work for them. They know how to be inventive, because they have to be. Because I think if you spoke to genre filmmakers, particularly in this country, they would say the funding's not always there. And I know that funders do speak about wanting to fund genre, but what I hear is that that's not translating, or that funders are looking for quote unquote elevated horror, but no one quite really knows what that means. So, crowdfunding is a thing, really, really grassroots funding. And a lot of these films are labors of love, as all films are, but they just start. I mean, I will say about horror filmmakers, they are absolutely tenacious. They do not stop. And we're talking about YouTube earlier, about being this breeding ground for independent horror filmmakers. There has always been breeding grounds for independent horror filmmakers. They've always been making shorts and films and experimenting with and for their friends, word of mouth going out in the community, horror film festivals like Fright Fest and Fantasia, kind of taking chances on these new voices. So they are there. They do need support, particularly in the UK. They need support, and they need support to build a career. Just like Ari Aster, for example, had support to build his career. You need to see someone's vision beyond one film. And I think that's key, really.
I just saw a really interesting new UK voice that's going to have its UK premiere at Edinburgh this week, which is The Peril at Pencer Point. It is directed by Jake Kuhn and Noah Stratton Twine. I hope I said their names right. It's kind of bonkers. It's kind of, fresh voice, goes a bit genre and weird, but like kind of this like DIY ethos on screen as well. So I thought that was an interesting one.
That is a
Let's
great
talk about
film.
some. Okay, let's talk about some of those other festival films you might have seen, because I know Screen reviewed a lot out of Fantasia, for instance. Any things that really popped out of Fantasia for you, or some other summer festivals?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's like I keep saying, there's so much good horror. And the fact that Fantasia programs, I mean, it feels like hundreds of horror films across its couple of weeks. It's never short of titles to program, and there were some absolute highlights out of there. Ancestral Beasts, which is an Indigenous Canadian kind of thriller about generational trauma. That was fantastic. The documentary Black Zombie, which is about reclaiming the figure of the zombie from Hollywood and putting it back in its African roots, which was absolutely fantastic. And a Danish queer vampire film called No Rest for the Wicked.
Danish and Faroese. I'm just going to interrupt you because
I apologize. Yes.
No, I was
Faroese.
actually in the Faroe Islands when they were scouting some of their locations. Yeah, that film really popped from Fantasia. Really smart.
And then, you know, some of my other critics had their favourites. Village of Eight Gravestones, which was a samurai kind of period film with a twist. And Farine, which is an Italian feminist giallo film, which I cannot wait to see. Looks absolutely fantastic. And then, of course, top prize winner Nightborn, which I saw out of Berlin and absolutely loved, by Hannah Bergholm, who's the Finnish director. She previously made Hatching. So she's an exciting female voice in horror. So they are there.
Yes, with my Scandi love, I was very happy to see some of those Nordic films really popping and winning awards at Fantasia as well. What about the Toronto Midnight Madness lineup? Because this is another big moment, I think, of the year for genre films. And I guess this is exactly where Obsession was last year, and then sold to Focus and Universal, and then look at it now. So what do you make of that, the TIFF Midnight Madness lineup?
I mean, I think that Peter Kapowski, who's the programmer for that strand, has got a fantastic eye for films that will connect with the genre audience. That strand is always exciting. It's always global. He always sort of pulls in the ones that are going to get the great reaction at those midnight screenings, which is what you want for that strand. It's interesting to note that they're rescreening Obsession this year in the strand to celebrate. I think it's tremendous success.
Oh, and I think they're having a talk with some of the creative team. Yeah.
So that obviously started its journey a year ago there. So I wonder what we'll be talking about this time next year out of the lineup. But the thing, I think there's a few that I mean, it's a solid lineup. It's hard to pick from them, and I'm looking forward to seeing them. But the ones I'm really looking forward to are The Face of Horror, which is from UK filmmaker Anne Bilson, who's following up The Love Witch, which she made 10 years ago. Which I know still sort of plays sometimes in my mind, that film, because it's so beautiful. And she's adapting a Japanese ghost story, but putting her own kind of Technicolor spin on it and setting it in 14th century England, which I think is an absolute, brilliant ingredient. Then there's an Indian film called Half by a filmmaker called Samjad. It's described as, and I'm quoting directly from the festival here, and if this doesn't make you want to see it, Wendy, I don't know what will, gory martial arts curry western.
Oh, okay.
It's about vampire twins in the desert going up against hijackers in the desert. Sounds fantastic.
I mean, it doesn't sound like anything else I will be watching this year, so we always like that, something unique. And
then there's a debut from a US filmmaker called Joshua, and I'm sorry, I'm going to mispronounce his name, Guiliano, called River, and it's a slasher set on a rural waterway. And I think Peter Kapowski himself has described it as one of the most suspenseful films he's ever seen, so that's a big seal of approval. And then finally, an Italian film from a filmmaker called Paolo Stripoli, who genre fans may know from his 2021 film, A Classic Horror Story, or The Holy Boy in 2025. It's called The Spiral. And it's apparently a morality chiller about a mother and her estranged daughter. And the stills from this film are intriguing enough for me to be, yes, I'm going to be seeing that. So, I mean, we could talk about all of the films in Midnight Madness as exciting prospects for genre fans, but those are the ones I'm particularly looking forward to.
Yeah, and also because that section is so tightly curated, they
really
must get thousands of submissions, and it's, very tight section, and people have come to depend on it for a great night out in Toronto. So
Absolutely.
we'll keep an eye on all that. Do read screendaily.com, little plug, for all the reviews of all of that coming up. And Nikki, we will stay in touch. I'm sure we'll be talking to you at Venice. I don't know how much genre fare we get treated to in Venice. Probably not much.
Well, there's Casey Affleck's filming competition called Company, which has been described as a gothic mystery. So we'll have to see about that. And then there is
we'll
one.
Have to see how gothic you are, Casey. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there is one that I want to flag in Critics Week that looks really interesting. It's a Turkish film called The Hollow Man. And it's set in 2059, and it's about memory suppression. And it looks very enigmatic, and sci-fi genre could possibly turn into horror reading the synopsis, but I will definitely check it out and report back.
Okay, you can let us know about the body count in that.
Absolutely will.
Okay, thank you, Nikki, for being here to talk about all things horror, to keep me cool with the kids and think I know what's going down out there on YouTube as well. And we'll be talking to you from Venice, I'm sure. So thanks for joining us, Nikki.
Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for tuning into the Screen Podcast. As always, please do subscribe, follow, like, leave us a comment about your favorite horror of the summer, if you so desire. And thanks to the whole team at Screen who makes this podcast possible, especially our producer, Ellie Calnan, our head of digital, Orlando Parfit. And we will see you again next Thursday.